Good afternoon. Well, I'm not bad, and you? Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for coming. In the last few days, I have spoken to the First and Deputy First Minister, to the Justice Minister and to the Chief Constable about what has been happening. Today, Minister Anderson and I have met with some of the business owners who have been attacked in the last few days here in Belfast, representatives of the Islamic Centre, local MLAs from South Belfast, Claire Hanna, the local Member of Parliament. We were hosted by the Lord Mayor. We have also met with officers from the PSNI who've been involved in dealing with the violent disorder that they have been experiencing in the last few days to hear about what happened on Saturday in particular, and also in Sandy Row on Monday night. We also talked to colleagues from the Fire and Rescue Service who have been involved, obviously, in trying to deal with fires as a result of what's been happening. I have to tell you, as I listened to the business owners, I was deeply shocked, and I became increasingly angry. Angry that people who have set up businesses, one of them took over a vacant shop unit in Sandy Row some years ago to establish his business, providing jobs, a service to the community, as he described people who turned up to try and burn him out of the business that he has created. The woman who runs a restaurant, it's a Greek restaurant, but she was attacked on Saturday by the mob that went down Botanic Avenue. And what we have been witnessing is completely unacceptable. This does not represent Northern Ireland. It doesn't represent the great city of Belfast. This is not what Northern Ireland wants to be known for. And it's really important that the vast majority of people who I know will be as shocked and angered and disgusted at what is happening speak up, that all of the political parties, and of course the Assembly is being recalled tomorrow, speak with one voice in condemning what has happened, because this needs to be brought to an end. And the most important contribution that members of the public can make is if you have any evidence, if you witnessed anything, if you've got any video footage. The police are very keen to catch those who have been engaging in violent disorder and criminality, but they need the evidence to pick people up and put them before the courts. And as we meet here this afternoon, across the other side of the Irish Sea, the first sentences are now being handed down. And I do believe that when those who engage in this sort of behaviour realise there is a consequence to it, and whether you're inciting violence online or you are engaging in violence on the streets, if the evidence is there, you will be found and you will be punished, because this cannot continue. That's all I wanted to say. To begin with, questions.
First question, BBC, Jane McCormack. Afternoon, Secretary of State. Thank you for that. You talked about the need for leadership in politicians. Do you think our politicians are visible enough so far, and it's given that we're not even speaking publicly together about this until tomorrow? When it comes to the issue of resources for the police, Keir Starmer said in England the police will have whatever resource is necessary. We know the funding constraints here in Northern Ireland, especially in the police. Are you prepared to put your hand in your pocket to help replace them?
Well, on the first question you ask, I welcomed very much the statement that the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister put out at the weekend about what had happened. And I said a moment ago that I hope very much that when the Assembly reconvenes tomorrow, we will see all of the political parties in Northern Ireland united in their condemnation of what has been going on. I think we, as elected representatives, whether those of us in the House of Commons or in the Assembly or local council leaders, we all have a responsibility to call out this racist violence for what it is, because it's targeted at a particular section of our community. One of the people who was talking to us today is a British citizen, and people are trying to force him out of his business. How can that possibly be acceptable? On the question of resources, look, I'm well aware of the police numbers here in Northern Ireland. But those decisions are taken by the executive. And as I've said to you before, whoever is in government, with the budget you've got to decide what your priorities are. And I have no doubt that the Chief Constable is making his case, as I'm sure the Justice Minister is doing as well. But that is a decision for the executive to determine upon, and we are waiting to see the programme of government, because if the executive wants to send a signal about the importance that it attaches to policing, it has an opportunity in the programme when it eventually appears, and Minister Anderson and I are looking forward to seeing that as soon as possible. Thank you.
UTV, Jordan Lewis.
Secretary, can you see statements from some political parties in the last few days talk about genuine concerns of communities here in Northern Ireland? Is language like that helpful in the conversation around what's happened over the last few days? And given that the PSNI has talked about paramilitary elements being involved in the disorder over the last few days, we hear some politicians talking about asking UVF and UDA to use their influence to stop the violence. Should we be asking those organisations to use their influence? Should they not exist in the first place?
Well, I would say that anyone who has any ability to stop the violence should use such influence as they have, whoever they are, because it is a responsibility on all members of the community, right-thinking people, to say this is not acceptable, this must stop, and it needs to stop now. Secondly, people are entitled to protest and people are entitled to their political views. But there is no justification whatsoever for engaging in this kind of violence that is targeting particular communities. Now, members of those communities, some of whom I've met today, are frightened. They are afraid. People are afraid to go out of their own houses. Health workers who've come to help the people of Northern Ireland by treating people in hospital, saying, well, I'm not entirely sure that I want to stay here, given what is going on. Is that what this society wants to do to itself? Surely not. Surely not. So, we must have a very clear distinction between criminal behaviour, which is what we've been witnessing these last few days here in Northern Ireland, and political debate about a whole range of issues which will continue. It is not the way to solve any of those problems to smash windows, intimidate people, throw bricks at members of our community or at the police, and engage in violent, rampaging disorder, which is why it needs to finish.
Secretary of State, you've spoken of your anger after meeting these business owners today.
Yeah.
Can more be done to protect our ethnic minority groups, and also to the people that are now planning protests over the next few days? What would your message be to those people?
Well, people are entitled to protest, but if you think you can engage in violent disorder again, then you've got another thing coming. There's no justification for that, and people should not do it. Now, those businesses are genuinely anxious. If you're cowering in the back of a shop or a restaurant because bricks are coming through the window or people are hurling chairs at the business, that you are scared for your life, I just ask anyone who's thinking of engaging in activity like that, what if it was your family's business, your home? If the door, someone was trying to kick in the door, as happened last night in a couple of instances in North Belfast. What is that about? These are people living in our community. They are part of our community. And you know where we should feel safest? It's at home. And when people are at home and they don't feel safe, well, that, I think, reflects very badly on all of us. And it should be a cause of shame that this is taking place. And my message is stop.
Can the police do more, though, to protect those minority groups?
Well, the police are working extremely hard. And when Minister Anderson and I met the rank-and-file police officers and a bronze and a silver commander earlier, they'd been on the front line. And we wanted to hear from them what the experience had been like. They have had long hours, they're tired, people have had to cancel leave and other breaks. The difficulty for the police is trying to be everywhere where you don't know when the disorder is going to break out. And what happened clearly on Saturday was the police did a very good job of containing the protests that occurred outside Belfast City Hall. They had protected the Islamic Centre, but then the crowd decided to go in lots of different directions, and the police didn't know where they were going to go. So it's a hard job, but it's a hard job because people are choosing to behave in this way. And we need to help the PSNI by providing evidence and information so people can be brought to account, because I do believe that is the quickest and best way to bring this kind of disorder to an end.
Rebecca Black, PA.
Secretary of State, the DUP representatives, as well as condemning the violence, the DUP representatives have also been calling for those that are disenfranchised, those that are so angry, to be listened to in some way or form, and to be able to essentially lump the boil by addressing what's going on rather than leaving it all to criminal justice response. Do you see any merit in our argument?
Well, anyone who feels disenfranchised, anyone who is facing difficulties in life, and that is true of all communities in all parts of our United Kingdom, well, of course our job as politicians is to listen to that. If you're talking about pressures on housing, there is a housing crisis right across the United Kingdom because we have not been building enough homes, and certainly not enough affordable homes. But it's really, really, really important that we draw a distinction between the legitimate raising of political concerns and issues that people have got, on the one hand, and going out and engaging in disorder and violence directed at people in the community. And if you're talking about economic disadvantage, how does trashing local businesses help anyone? It doesn't, and there's no excuse for it.
Rogers, Amanda Ferguson.
Hello, Secretary of State. There's been supportive words for the Belfast business owners from the UK government. I'm just wondering, will there be financial support from the UK government for those affected businesses? And on a second point, how much do you think that 14 years of Tory government rhetoric has fed into what we're seeing now? I was at a Féile discussion earlier about the rise of the far right in Ireland, and some people were saying that Labour's Smash the Gangs is the new version of Stop the Boats. I'm just wondering what your response is to that.
Well, I think there's at least three questions in that. Look, on the last point, the criminal gangs who are putting people's lives at risk in crossing the Channel need to be dealt with. And the government is determined to deal with that. Now, what were your first two questions?
Just what is it going to be financial support?
Oh, yes. For the businesses, well, I raised that at the meeting at the City Hall, and the Chief Executive of Belfast City Council said the Council is currently looking at that, and I hope that they will be able to find some resource to help those businesses. And your third question was?
The Tory government rhetoric over the last 14 years.
Well, look, I'm profoundly glad that the last 14 years have now been put behind us, and somebody in the meeting we were at welcomed the change in tone and approach there has been from the new government in this country. Because anyone online or on the streets who is trying to stir up hatred against other people because of the colour of their skin or their religion, and the Islamic faith is being particularly targeted, and we've got to call it out for what it is doing a great disservice to society. It's wrong. And if people engage in that kind of conduct, then if the evidence is there and they're put before a court and they're convicted, then they will feel the consequences. Because how else can society show what is or is not acceptable? And that is not acceptable.
Okay, final question to Jane McCormack, BBC.
Minister Anderson, just can I ask you what struck you when you were speaking to some of the businesses today? And do you think that everybody has a responsibility to call this out in public terms of using anti-immigration protesters? Do you need to say what it is, far-right demonstrators?
The reason why the Secretary of State and I are here is exactly to call it out today, to say a united front with MLAs, with MPs, across the piece, that the leadership is saying no to any more of this thuggery and criminal activity that we're seeing. And there's a mixture of reasons and a mixture of intent. It's not all far right. It's some young people getting caught up in this. But to everyone who's getting involved, we're saying that it should not continue. And to all those people who are standing up in the community, that's what we were hearing today. We were hearing of community leaders and the businesses who are standing up and having support from the community around them. That's the best of Belfast. That's what we can see when we have times of trouble like this. It's the best of Belfast. It's those people who come out to support communities, to support businesses that we have also been hearing about today. So I've heard about some dreadful things, some things that must stop, but also some of the best of Belfast as well.
Hear, hear to that. Thanks very much for coming. Cheers. Okay.